everyone, welcome to our third week. We're almost halfway done. This week we're talking about citations, citation managers, and primary versus secondary sources. And I just want to let you know that there are some cool organizational tools that you can use, such as Dropbox, Google Drive, Prezi, Evernote, and then there's citation managers, which we will be talking about to organize all your work. So first, the search strategy and publication cycle. So, there's secondary sources, tertiary sources, and primary sources. So, tertiary sources are guides to the literature and library catalogs, and secondary sources include encyclopedias, monographs, reviews, handbooks, directories, dictionaries, almanacs, indexes and abstracts, databases, bibliographies. Primary sources include lab notebooks, letter to editors, journals, patents, conference proceedings, journal articles, technical reports, dissertations, theses, email, correspondence, etc. So, primary sources are produced for research and development, non-formal communication, preliminary communication, and to formalize. Secondary sources are concentrated and they're repackaged and they're organized. Tertiary sources are just organized. So what's popular versus scholarly? Well, scholarly journals, the authors are researchers, and the purpose is to educate researchers and students. The language is often technical, and the sources, and they often have footnotes and references. They're often advertised at conferences, and they often have tables and charts. The publishers are research institutions, and they are peer-reviewed. Magazines and newspapers are by reporters, and they're to entertain for the general public. They use common language, and they're not usually cited. Their advertising is extensive, and they have glossy photos. And the publishers are for-profit, and they are not peer-reviewed. Trade journals are by professionals to inform other professionals. The language is professional and technical depending on the industry. It's not usually cited. It's specific to the profession. The illustrations are supporting the profession, and the publishers are professional societies, but they are not peer-reviewed. So types of sources, primary and secondary. Primary are first-hand raw or original materials that researchers studies and analyze. It involves consulting historical documents, visuals, journals, and letters, autobiographies, memoirs, government statistics, and studies and speeches. They involve examining works of art, literature, and architecture, or watching or listening to performances and programs. It involves study or initiating case studies or scientific experiments and taking extensive field notes. They conduct interviews and use data collected from questionnaires. Secondary sources are analytical works that comment on and interpret other works, such as primary sources. Examples include reviews, discussions, biographies, critical studies, analysis of literary or artistic works or events, commentaries on current and historical events, class lectures, and electronic discussions. Now, to evaluate sources, you need to read the sources critically. So ask questions about the credentials and reputation of the author and the place of publication. What do you learn about the writer's purpose and the audience whom the author is addressing? Ask questions about the ideas you read. An easy way to do this is to write your annotations in the margins, and/or if you get a sense of doubt, make a note of what troubles you. Be on the lookout for assumptions that may be faulty. If you're reading an article on homeschooling and the writer favors homeschooling because it avoids subjecting students to violence in schools, the unstated assumption is that all schools are violent places. Make sure the writer's evidence is adequate and accurate. For example, if the writer is making a generalization about all Chinese students based on a study of only 3, you have cause to challenge the generalization as resting on inadequate evidence. Note how the writer uses language. Which terms does the writer use, with positive or negative connotations, signaling the values the writer holds? Does the writer flamboyantly denigrate and dismiss the views of others with such phrases as a ridiculous notion or laughably inept policies? Be alert for sweeping generalizations, bias, and prejudice. Women want to stay home and have children, or men love to spend Sundays watching sports are examples of bias and prejudice. So to recognize scholarly articles, they're not usually found in magazines in a dentist's office. They are peer-reviewed, that is, other scholars read the articles and approve them for publication. These articles have section headings, abstracts, and some summary and or conclusion headings. They determine the author's main idea. They refer to works of other scholars, like a reference page, in-text citations, author credentials, notes, in-depth analysis, uses academic or technical language for informed readers, appears in journals that don't include colorful advertisements, etc. And evaluating websites. If you find an article in a subscription database like InfoTrack or LexisNexis, which is the law database, you will know that the article has been published in print. If the article has been published in a reputable periodical or an online journal sponsored by a professional organization or university, you can assume that it is a valid source for a research paper. For works devised specifically for the web, use the following strategies to separate the information from the junk. Scrutinize the domain name of the URL. So reliable information can be found on .gov and .edu addresses that are institutionally sponsored. With .com or .org sources, always assess whether the source provides factual information or advocates a specific point of view on an issue. And then assess the originator of an .edu source. Check that the institution or a branch of it is a sponsoring site. A tilde followed by the name in the URL indicates an individual posting from an academic source. Try to ascertain whether the individual is a faculty member or a student. Increasingly, though, individuals are setting up websites under their own domain name. Then check the About page or the Home page. Always take the link from a website to its About or its Home page if you're not already there. These pages often provide more information about the author and the sponsor, the purpose, and the date of posting. Then determine the author and discover what you can know about him or her. Look for a list of credentials, a homepage, a resume, or web publications. In Google or Google Scholar, use the author's name as a search term to see what the author has published on the internet or who has cited the author. If no individual author or institutional author is to be found anywhere, check the purpose and sponsor of the site. Next, investigate the purposes of a web page, author, or sponsor. Objectivity and rationality are not necessarily features of all web pages. The sponsor of a site may want to persuade, convert, or sell, even if the message is not obviously biased and extreme. Be aware that most authors write from some sense of conviction or purpose. Note, though, that a website can be oriented toward a specific view without necessarily being irresponsible. And then you're going to evaluate the quality of the writing. A web page filled with spelling and grammatical errors should not inspire confidence. If the language has been checked, the ideas probably haven't been given much time and thought either. Don't use such a site as a source. Exceptions are discussion lists and Usenet postings. They're written and posted quickly, so even if they contain errors, they can also contain useful ideas to simulate thinking on your topic. Then follow the links. See whether the links in a site take you to an authoritative source. If the links no longer work, you'll get a 404 message, site not found. The homepage with the links has not been updated in a while, and that is not a good sign. Next, check for dates, updates, ways to respond, and ease of navigation. A recent date of posting or recent updating, information about the author, ways to reach the author by email, regular mail or phone, a clearly organized site, easy navigation, up-to-date links to responsible sites are all indication that the site is well managed and current. Lastly, corroborate the information. Try to find the same information on another reliable site. Also look for contradictory information elsewhere. Okay, so what are citations? A citation is like an address for a source. It's a way to avoid plagiarism, which you should review the Academic Integrity document if you haven't already for ESF. Purdue Online Writing Lab is also a helpful resource for citations, so I recommend viewing that if you don't already know about it. So basics in citing using APA. So in-text citation in a book. So if you have in-text citation, you do the author, comma, the year. But you can also do the year and then the page number as well if you mention the author in the sentence. And then in the reference page, you would do the author, last name, then first initial, then the year, and then the title, and then the place of publication. For a print article, for an in-text citation, you would do the author's last name, comma, the date, comma, the page. Or you could mention the author and do just in parentheses the date, comma, the page number. For the reference page, you would do last name, comma, first name, the initial, period, and then in parentheses the date, and then the title, and then the publication and the page numbers, the volume, and the page numbers if there's volume. And then in an online database, you would do the authors and then comma date. On a reference page, you would do the authors by last name, then first name, and then in parentheses the date, and then the title, and then the publication, and the volume and page numbers, and when you retrieved it, and where you retrieved it. Document on a website, you would do the author's last name, comma, the date, and then for the reference page you would do the author's last name, comma, first initial, and in parentheses the date, and then the document name, when you retrieved it, and where you retrieved it from, the actual website URL. So there's two parts to citing. There's in text and then the reference list, which we just saw. Anything cited in text must have a full citation in the reference list, and you must cite anything of someone else's that you use. Books, articles, images, websites, emails, TV, movies, patents, etc. So ways to integrate sources in text. You can summarize or extract main ideas from original text using your own words. You can paraphrase, similar in length to original text, but in your own words. This does not mean changing a few words here and there. You can quote and direct copy from the original text. It may be just a line or several sentences, usually not appropriate in scientific research. You must cite the source in all of these cases. The placement of author, date, page info differs for each type, so see guides and examples for more information. Different styles and formats include APA, which is the American Psychological Association, MLA, Modern Languages Association, CSE, the Council of Science Editors, ACS, the American Chemical Society, Chicago/Turbian, and others. There is a Citation Styles Research Guide if you need help. There's an APA guide on Blackboard, and look for style guides in the main desk in Moon. Most of these styles are used in certain fields and associations or societies, and all use the basic parts of citations, but in different orders and formats. Sometimes journals follow their own styles, so try not to do this, and come see me if you're going to use a journal-specific style. Choose one that you're familiar with or use in your field of study, like if you're chemistry, then use APA or ACS. For chem section, I adapted the CSE guide to APA for you, so check it out on Blackboard. And this is just, one does not simply cite 50 references in 10 minutes. And some of your homework for this week is the citation activity on Blackboard and the interlibrary loan activity. This is due by the end of the week, not on Wednesday, by the way. And we'll stop there and go to the next slide.